Now let's talk about loops. Sometimes we want to run a piece of code over and over again or apply some changes to every item in an array. So instead of repeating the same code, we will run the code through a loop. So instead of writing, for example, something like this, like 10 times echoing the same thing, we can run a loop and then write this once, and the loop will repeat this for us. There are 4 types of loops in PHP: for, while, do while, and for each. Let's go through them one by one. For loop. The structure of a for loop is something like this. We have some counter and we initialize it, then we test it, we go through some condition. If this condition is true, we will run the code. If it's not true, we will pass this part. And if it was true and we ran the code, at the end we will change the counter. So for example, here I would write something like for x, here is our counter, x equals to 0. This can be anything. Our x could start from 1, 10, 100, anything. And the condition, I want x to be less than 10. Okay, if this is true and we ran the code, I should change it. So I would say x plus plus. Here we have initialized our x. As I said, it could be 2, 10, 100, doesn't matter. Then we have tested it. It could be x is less than or equal to 10. Is less than equal to 10 to the power of 100. It can be anything. And then we will change it. It's very important to change it. Here we have added 1. X plus plus means x plus 1. We could do something like x equals x to the power of 2. It doesn't matter, but we have to change it. So after each iteration, our x would go through this process and would go through this formula. But for now, x plus plus is enough. And then we will do something. Here I would say echo value of x is x. Do you remember when we talked about single quotes and double quotes? Here I use double quotes and I simply put x here. PHP will interpret it and will give me the value of x. Let me run the code. Here I have to comment this out first. Okay, now let's run the code again. Okay, value of x is 0, value of x is 1, value of x is 2, and so on. Now let's talk about while loop. The structure of a while loop is something like this. While this condition is true, do something, and this part is very important. Do something that affects the condition. We should create some change. So the condition at some point would not be true and would be false, and we go out of the loop. Otherwise we will be stuck in the loop forever and ever. That's actually one of the most common mistakes with while loop. A lot of developers create this loop, use this loop, and then do not do something to change the condition. So at some point it would be false, so we would be out of the code. And that would cause an infinite loop. This loop would go on forever and ever. Let's see an example of a while loop usage. Let's say I have a number and this number is 2. While this number is less than 10, I want this code to tell me the number is number. Let me show you something. Now if I comment that out and run my code here, phpindex.php, it will go on forever and ever because there is nothing to stop it. I will use Ctrl+C to stop the code. I have to change it. For example, I can say number plus plus. So at some point it will stop. Let me run the code again. See, it ran one, number is 2, number is 3, number is 4, number is 5, and number is 9. Then it tested out, is it smaller than 10? No, because it has been incremented. It would be 10, and 10 is not less than 10. So it would not run this code. It would come here, and because we don't have any other code, it would come out of this program and stops. Now let's talk about do while loop. The structure of a do while loop is something like this. We will run some code and then we will check if the condition is true. If this condition is true, we will run this part again. Otherwise, we will come out of the loop and we will continue the execution of the rest of the code. This is very similar to while loop, but there is one difference, and that is with while loop, we check the condition first. If it was true, then we will run the code. So if the condition is false, we will never run the code inside the loop. But with do while loop, we will run the code inside the loop at least once, no matter the condition is true or false. We run it once, then we will check the condition if it's true or false. If it's true, we will run it again. If it's false, we will come out of the loop and execute the rest of the code. Let me show you an example. For example, here I have, let me bring this one here. Let's say I have a number. As long as this number is less than 10, I want you to echo the number. Let's say here I have number 20. If the number is 20, we will never go inside the loop. But if I write do while the number, use the same condition, while the number is less than 10, I want you to echo it and then do some changes. Let me comment this part out. Now 20. Now if I run the code, I expect it to run it at least once. Let's see if it run it once. Yes, number is 20. It will run the code and then it will check if it's less than 10 or not. So this is the main difference between do while and while. Now let's talk about for each loop. The title has gone up, okay? For each loop is very useful. The structure of a for each loop can be something like this. For each array as value, it would be read something like for each value inside the array, do this. Here we can say echo the value. Or sometimes we need to get the key as well. In that case, we can say for each key value pair of this array, do this part. And here we can say echo the key in the array is value. And first let's define the array. Array is something like, I don't know, 1 AMIR YouTube 3 and the semicolon. Let's run the first loop, and as you can see, 1 AMIR YouTube and 3. And if we run the second loop, we will get the 0 in the array is 1, the 1 in the array is AMIR, the second in the array is YouTube, and the third in the array is 3. Is the key and it's the value. Perfect. For each is actually very useful when we are working with arrays. So instead of writing some for loop, something like this, for I, let's initialize the counter, then check if it's less than the size of the array and change the counter, then echo the array at this index. For example, here we can run, you see, I'll get the same result, But when we ran this one, you see how easier it is to read, how more readable it is. This is the end of the loop. Let's go to the next section.